Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a graphic nature and in graphic detail and may not be suitable for children under the age of 13. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again here at Unsung Murder Ballads. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And today we are doing another case that was a case suggestion from a listener. This listener was from Australia. This is the second case suggestion we've done from Millennium Angel. So thank you for that. This case is the case of the Snowtown murders. Have you guys heard of this one?
Yes.
I have not.
So how much do you know, Jameson?
Not a whole lot. I know the basics, but not a lot of the details. So I'm interested to get further into this one.
Yeah. So I knew of this before the suggestion came in. It was on my list of cases to cover. I was hesitant to do it because it's more famous. Even I was unprepared for some of the details here. So,
boy.
Yeah. So before we dig a little deeper, I have to say there's a part of me that wishes I hadn't dug a little deeper. Because this case is so brutal, I do need to add an additional trigger warning. It does involve anti-gay violence, torture, mutilation, sexual assault of children, and even an added dash of cannibalism.
All right, we're back on the Greyhound.
That's a lot on the plate.
Sounds like.
Yeah, it's very similar. No, I won't say it's very similar to the Greyhound bus one because this one is that one was obviously someone who had an issue and it was a one-shot thing. This is a serial killer case. So yeah, so the Snowtown murders is one of, if not the worst serial killer case in Australian history. I am going to tell this story as it unfolded for police rather than my usual chronological order, mostly because you guys don't know as much about it. So I figure, for example, with Israel Keys, instead of telling that the way most people tell it, which is how the police learned about it, I had set out to tell that more chronologically because anyone who knew Israel Keys knew that story.
Right.
So this one I'm going to go with the idea that you don't really know. So therefore, maybe some of these things will be surprises for you because I'm curious as to your genuine reactions. So,
all right, let's get into it.
All right. So this started with the police looking into routine missing person cases in Adelaide, Australia. Now, if you don't remember, this is the exact same city where the Beaumont children had gone missing in the 1960s.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an officer in charge of major crimes. His name was Paul Schramm. And he started a policy that allowed officers to look at open missing person cases on their downtime. He just kind of said, hey, no one's really looking at these. If you have that moment, if you're not really working on anything right away, go ahead and, start digging through some files. So he goes down on his time off and asks for some cases. And one of the things that he has said in interviews, and it's something that we should kind of note, is really there's only 3 reasons people go missing. 1, they chose to, and they are actively avoiding being found. The second is that they've taken their own lives and they haven't been discovered yet. And third, which we deal mostly here, is that they've met with foul play. Before we really dive too deep into this, I do want to talk about some missing person stats. Okay? If that's okay. Okay. Because you know me, I love to go down the rabbit hole.
I love stats.
So as we've discussed, how often police assume missing children are runaways and how frustrating that is because they should be taking action sooner.
Yep.
Believe it or not, the largest number of missing children are actually mean, and 99% of them return home safely.
What?
I'm so glad.
I feel like that's much higher than...
No, that's the statistic.
Oh, wow.
And in the U.S., and this number is nuts to me, in the U.S., an estimated 460,000 children are reported missing every year.
Oh, my God.
Almost 500,000.
I'm like, how many children are in the U.S.?
So even in the highest risk cases, 97% of those children are returned alive or found alive.
How?
Yeah, so it's funny because we always do these cases and we see the worst of the worst. These numbers sound nice. But and here's my caveat: only one in every only one child in every 10,000 that go missing are not found alive. So
Wow.
this is according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Now, this is easy math, but I'm going to say it anyway because, they use percentages, I think, to obscure the actual figures. 1% of 460,000 missing children, or 1 out of every 10,000, basically sums up to 4,600 kids that are lost every year. That's a lot of kids. If we had to take a guess at how many kids are taken and never found again, we probably would have guessed in this ballpark, 5,000 kids. Maybe we would have gone that high, but they obscure it by saying, oh no, it's only 1%.
Right. I guess it feels like that when you're investing the cases, and probably your whole career, you might encounter one case in which the child does not return home safe, but
right. But when you're
that
talking
doesn't mean
about,
there's not so many. Yeah.
right, exactly. And if you think about 4,600 kids that are lost, that's roughly 100 kids per state.
Yeah.
And
That's a lot.
And and that's including Wyoming.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
I'm joking, mate. Wyoming. I only make that joke because I know there's less than one person per square mile in the state of Wyoming. So I kid Wyoming. Okay. Anyway, so those are the missing kids. Now we're going to talk about missing adults. So according to NAMUS, the NAMUS database, which stands for the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, which is complicated, roughly 600,000 people go missing every year in the US. So more adults go missing than children. And believe it or not, that number is down from the late 90s, where we had a year where 980,000 people went missing.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Oh.
It's crazy.
That's
now,
like 1 in 300 people.
Yeah, exactly. It's nuts. Now, again, most of those are going to come home safe. They chose to go missing. Interestingly, even though with all those people going missing, so the 600,000 annually, right? Only 4,400 bodies are found that can't be identified every year. That's less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's crazy to me that we have all these people going missing, but less than 1% of people are found and can't be identified. What's happening to all these people?
I'm sitting here with my jaw open. Like I can't even fathom that.
These numbers are crazy. And that's why when I started seeing them, I'm like, I have to share this.
Yeah, I guess usually you have to really mess up someone's remains in order to not be able to identify them, because they have dental records and they have DNA and they have
that's true. You're right.
all that kind of stuff.
Although if you're not in a database, like, do you know if your DNA is stored somewhere?
I mean, I have like ancestry.com, so
okay, so you
have my
are
DNA.
Okay,
but I don't know if the police have access to that. I don't think they do.
I think they're trying to pass laws in some states. I know Heather Bish of the Molly Bish case is pushing for that sort of thing, but only under certain circumstances.
Right.
But, for example, I served in the military in the 90s, and I'm not sure my DNA is on file anywhere. It might be, but I don't know that in the 90s that the military was collecting it. Now they do.
Yeah, in the 90s, probably not. They probably don't have your...
Correct. That's what I'm saying. So it's just one of those things, like if my body was found without any other identifying markers in North Dakota, they're not going to know who I am. It's not like they're going to know to check some dentist in Massachusetts for my dental records. So it's harder, I think. If we're lucky and my DNA is in the system, then yes, they'll identify me. But otherwise, that's it. They're not going to know who I am.
True.
Because that's the other thing. They have to know where to look first. They have to ask the right questions. They have to kind of say, we think it's this person. Let's check their dental records.
Oh, gosh. I wasn't sure what the process was. If there was some like national tooth database.
No, that's pretty funny, though. No, they have to. It's one of those things like, they have to kind of have a general idea, and then they use that to just kind of drive home the last nail. But they're not. Yeah, there's no database of all of our dental records that I'm aware of.
Some people don't go to the dentist, so
yeah, like most of the South.
For most poor people.
You're just hitting all the areas tonight, aren't you?
I am. I'm being a jerk, and You're right. It's expensive and poor people don't go as often as they should. And you know what? I'm not in the poor category and I don't go as often as I should. And throughout my life
Same.
I've had 3 root canals.
Ah,
Ooh,
Yeah, I
yeah, go
know.
to the dentist, please, Janice.
I know I'm an idiot. So, continuing on. So, in contrast, Australia has only an average of 38,000 missing persons reported every year, and less than 10% of that number aren't found in the first 3 months, meaning that in the first 3 months, they find 90% of missing persons in Australia.
Interesting.
So,
wow, they're doing something right.
drastically different than here.
Well, they also have about 10%, less than 10% of our population.
That's true too. Yeah, you know what? That's a good
We got to
point.
think about per capita here.
You're right. You're right. So, the 38,000 keeping with our 600,000. Yeah, it's probably in the same ballpark. You're right.
Yeah, it's probably half, probably about half,
Yeah,
which is significant
right.
considering how much open space they have, like in the center of the country with all the desert and how much like unoccupied space. There's a lot of room for people to go missing.
That's true. And they have a lot of deadly creatures over there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, however, about half of all missing persons reported in Australia are actually between the ages of 13 and 19.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a
I was
rough,
not expecting that demographic.
yeah, that's a rough number right there. One interesting thing I found while researching that is going missing is not a crime. And if a missing person is found, they have to give permission to law enforcement or, or whoever found them to inform family and friends.
That's good. That's a good policy.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Because if I purposely chose to go missing because I'm hiding from an abusive spouse or something, I don't, the police should not just be able to say, oh, yeah, he's here.
Yeah, right.
But it is a little crazy at the same time. It almost feels like you have this panicking family, but, and then the police can't tell the panicking family. But at the same, I guess they could say they're alive, just not where. I don't know. It's weird.
Now, is there an
Yeah.
age of consent for that? Or
Well,
can you
I would
just be
assume. Well, I didn't dig too much deeper on that one, but I would assume that if you're a child, then there is no, like, you're right. There's not that right there. Like someone else is responsible for you.
okay?
So, like, I think if you're not a legal adult, then the police have to bring you back to your guardians.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because otherwise, what would ever be the point for looking for somebody who ran away?
True.
Right.
Okay, so now back to Snowtown. Side note done. One motivated officer, that Schramm guy, had gone in and asked to be given 10 files that everyone thought were the most needing in being reviewed, and they handed him a bunch of them. The file that really jumped out at him was for a missing person named Clinton Tresize. Clinton Tresize had spent most of his childhood in foster care, and at the time of his disappearance in 1992, he had hit rock bottom and was pretty much down on his luck. He wasn't reported missing, however, until 1995. So he went 3 years without anyone even kind of noticing that he was MIA. That's how low he had fallen.
That's kind of sad.
But when police initially looked into his disappearance, they found nothing. There were no movements in his bank accounts. Some of his possessions had gone missing at the same time that he did. So everyone assumed that he just left because he was an adult. While Tresize was being reinvestigated, another missing persons case had come up. And this was a man by the name of Barry Lane, who was reported missing by his family. In looking into Lane, the police discovered that there was actually a link between him and Tresize. Clinton Tresize had, yeah, right. Like, and this is, to me, when I was doing the research and putting all this together, the whole time I'm like, idiots. But you'll see as we go.
Interesting.
So Clinton Tresize had actually lived with Barry Lane in the early 90s. The two were friends and rumored to be a bit more physically involved with each other.
They were roommates.
Correct. Quote unquote roommates. Barry Lane, however, was also a known predator and pedophile.
Oh.
Yes. As the police dug deeper, they found out that both of these men were on a disability pension. Now, a quick note, at the time in Australia, this disability pension was more or less like collecting welfare checks here in the US.
Yeah, I mean that is what welfare disability is considered welfare, yeah.
Right. But I mean, when I hear disability, I think someone who suffered an injury or something like that. But there, it's like you're basically in an area like Adelaide at the time, there were sections that were so poor, there were literally no jobs to be had.
Oh,
So you couldn't get a job regardless of how hard you were trying. So the state, or whatever they were calling it there, um, gives out these disability checks to kind of help. So it's like welfare, but they call it disability, which is kind of odd.
interesting.
It's a confusing from for an
Because
outsider.
they don't have the ability to get a job, so in a way.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to
Makes
look at it.
sense.
Right. So what police saw was that even though these two men were missing, their disability money was still being withdrawn from various ATMs in the area.
Interesting.
Like you sound like one of the police officers. This is going to be fun. I'm picturing you dressed as a cop.
I
Like,
swear to God,
actually, I'm dressed as
if
a
you corrupt
detective.
the case,
I'm wearing a trench coat and a big hat.
there we go. Oh, see, awesome,
I have a character, don't worry.
perfect. So police initially assume that this means the two men are still alive. Obviously, what else would you think? Lane's pension money was actually being withdrawn from the same ATM at a particular service station north of Adelaide. So this made the police a bit more suspicious because why aren't you traveling about taking money out from different areas? You know, why
Yep.
is it always the same one? So police go and they install cameras so that they can watch the exact ATM to see what's going on. It doesn't take long before they can see who was actually withdrawing the money, and it was not Barry Lane.
well, no kidding.
Well, you
Hey,
never know.
you do. You never know.
No, well, no. Okay, so when you had first said, they assumed that he was alive, my first thought, was somebody's forcing them to do this, or their information was taken by force and somebody else was taking the money. Never once did I think that it was them doing it on their own.
Okay. And you're right. This is a true crime podcast and we talk about murders. So why else would we be talking about this?
For that.
So obviously, it doesn't take long once they have an image of this person to figure out who's taking the money out of Barry Lane's account. And it was a man by the name of Robert Wagner. And no, not the actor. and if it
I
had
don't
been,
know who that actor is.
see, you're a young one. So, and if it had been him, it certainly would have made us look at the death of Natalie Wood even more closely.
Oh
But,
God, that
yeah.
would have been an interesting tie-in.
right? That'd have been
Still don't know what
crazy.
the fuck you're talking about, but go off.
Okay, no, here we go. Side note, because this is too good not to discuss.
Sidebar.
So, do you know who Natalie Wood is?
No.
Have you seen the original West Side Story?
Yes.
She was Maria.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay, and as a young girl, she was the little girl in oh my God, the one with Santa Claus and the little girl that sits on his knee. It's a Wonderful
Life.
World.
Oh.
Yes, that's it. It's a Wonderful Life. That was her first film role. And
Mm.
she goes on and she's in West Side Story and all these other famous movies. She was huge. And
Yeah.
she was married to another actor named Robert Wagner. And do you know who Christopher Walken is?
Yes, I know who
Okay.
Christopher Walken is.
Yeah, the guy, We Need More Cowbell and all the other movies he's done.
Yeah, he's a goofy guy.
Correct. He was one of their best friends. They were all out on a boat off the coast of California near the Mexican border. And the next one, after a party, the next day, she's found dead floating in the water.
Oh God.
Yeah. So and no one heard her fall in. There's all this speculation. They eventually released a whole thing, and the coroner gave quite a detailed thing that what he thinks happened, which was she was probably drunk, maybe had a little more than just alcohol in her system, that she may have been in an argument with one or both of them and had tried to get into the little dinghy boat to bring her to shore and fallen in, but she was wearing too much clothes, but she was too drunk. But she was too drunk to think to take off the clothes, so it kind of pulled her under, and that's how she drowned. But yeah, it was awful. But there's a lot of speculation that maybe there was more to it. So anyway, but had that been the exact same Robert
Right.
Wagner,
Okay,
this would have
I'm
been
with
crazy.
you.
Yeah. Sorry. Side note, everyone, we apologize. So
Hey, there may be some viewers that love our sidebars.
that's true. We don't get enough feedback from you guys. So let us know. Should we cut that down more or do more of it? We'll be here for 3 hours. Nothing but sidebars. So as police continue investigating, they learn that Robert Wagner is actually friends with Barry Lane. So initially, and Wagner has no criminal history, so no red flags pop up. They don't really know, like maybe this guy's being sent there by Lane. They continue to just watch, and they see him repeat the same act time and again over the course of a couple of weeks. And with Lane missing now for 6 months, police decide they're just going to start following Wagner, and he leads them to yet another man that Barry Lane also knew. This is a guy by the name of John Bunting. John Bunting has no major criminal history, just a couple minor infractions with law enforcement, but nothing that immediately makes the hairs on their neck stand up, so to speak. Bunting grew up in a place called Inala, which is a suburb of Adelaide, and his parents were hardworking people. As police would later learn, Bunting did have a history of harming and killing insects by dropping them into chemicals and acids just to see what would happen.
Well, there's one of the check marks, right?
Exactly. Yep. And that, of course, escalated. And as a teen, he took pleasure in torturing animals. So, yeah, it's one of the one of the trifectas.
Three big ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's wetting the bed, setting fires, and torturing
things
animals.
and killing animals. Yeah.
Yeah. And as an adult, Bunting became interested in Nazism and racism and white supremacy.
Oh, he's quite the character.
Oh yeah, he's a guy. He's a guy you want to hang out with. He also claims that he was sexually assaulted as a child by a friend's brother. And Wagner is also known to have been sexually abused by an older man when he was a child. So apparently these guys got that to bond over.
That's really common in foster care. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's more common than I would have ever have guessed, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I would say not even just in foster care.
Yeah.
So Bunting, as we'll see, used that vulnerability of Wagner's to manipulate him. And he's kind of the leader of all this, and he's very good at manipulating those around him. So back to the case of Barry Lane, he and Bunting were known to hang out, especially at Bunting's house where he had lived at the time with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So now that the police have the names of Bunting and Wagner, they start seeing a more clear picture of everything that was happening and how it all seems to be connected to numerous other missing persons cases.
Interesting.
In November of 1998, things took a really weird turn. A woman by the name of Elizabeth Hayden was also reported missing. When police began investigating her disappearance, they interviewed her husband, Mark, at their home. He wasn't the one that reported her missing. He claimed that she left him and that their marriage was just over. However, yeah, right? Like, I guess if I knew if my wife just left me, I guess I wouldn't call the police. They don't need to be updated. So there's that. But the fact that someone else is reporting her missing is the concerning part.
Yeah.
So in this weird thing, while Mark is talking to the police, he actually brings up the name John Bunting.
Ooh, that's weird.
Yeah, and the only thing I can come up with is he must have thought like he could say Bunting and kind of use him as an alibi or something, but not realizing that the police were looking into him.
Right.
Backfired.
Yeah, police were like, oh shit, something's up. So while police had been concerned that there might have been foul play involved with all these missing person cases pretty much from the outset, they were now much more concerned about how bad this could be exactly. And their fears were realized when they made a random discovery at Elizabeth Hayden's home. Neighbors of Hayden's saw Wagner and Bunting loading garbage bags into a Toyota Land Cruiser, which is like a large van. And they had it parked in her driveway. They loaded all these bags in, and then it was gone, never to be seen again. And and this was done right at the time that the neighbors stopped seeing Elizabeth.
Not a good sign.
Yeah. So police
trash bags.
Police interviewed Bunting, Wagner, and Mark Hayden separately about the Land Cruiser. And they all had different stories as to what happened to the vehicle.
That was going to be my next comment. I was going to say, I wonder if they all had the same story or if it was all just screwed up.
Well, it's funny because if you're smart about it, you have the same basic story, but not exactly word for word the same story.
Oh, yeah, you got to change a little
Right.
bit of something.
But so many times people get caught because they're literally saying word for word the same story,
Yeah.
you know? So obviously, police were more suspicious and they knew they needed to find that vehicle. After this, Wagner and Bunting were linked to yet another missing person. A woman by the name of Suzanne Allen went missing in 1996.
How many are we up to now?
I think 5.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So interestingly, when police went back and started looking through the missing persons file for Suzanne Allen, Bunting and Wagner's name were littered throughout this report.
Huh.
Witnesses say they saw Wagner and Bunting loading her furniture into a truck around the same time that she went missing.
Huh. Why are they taking her furniture?
I mean, I guess you could try to claim that, hey, I'm a friend of hers, we're helping her move or something, but like,
Yeah. But why are they actually taking it?
yeah, I probably to sell.
Oh my God.
Or burn or dispose of.
Yeah, maybe there's DNA. Oh, they wouldn't have had, this is the 90s, so maybe they wouldn't have been as aware of DNA, but either way.
Yeah, true.
But Bunting's and Wagner's names just kept coming up in way too many of these missing person cases. By February of 1999, all 4 cases for Barry Lane, Clinton Tresize, Elizabeth Hayden, and Suzanne Allen were now considered major crimes, no longer just missing persons. And only a few months later, a 5th name would be added. So this is number 5. Ray Davies, a former lover of Suzanne Allen. And he hadn't been seen since 1995.
Oh my God, what is it with these people and being missing for years before anything's done?
You know, it's tough to say. It's a poor area that people want to get out of. Some of these guys are transients. Some of them are, they're out of luck. They don't work. So who's really reporting them missing?
Fair enough.
They're looking into Ray Davies, but police actually decide to continue focusing their attention on Elizabeth Hayden's disappearance because she's the wife of Mark Hayden. And here he is using Bunting as this alibi, so to speak.
Yeah, sketch.
So as police describe Elizabeth Bunting, she'd had a really hard life, but she wasn't particularly intelligent. But she also spent a lot of time around John Bunting.
Interesting.
So Mark Hayden was friends with Bunting, and over time, Elizabeth began to annoy Bunting. And as a result, Mark began to dislike his own wife.
Damn. My friends don't like her. I don't either.
And similar to Wagner, he's obviously easily manipulated by Bunting.
Yep.
So Mark Hayden, I mean, and it's funny because I'm saying this is my next note. He actually looked up to Bunting, and Bunting obviously took advantage of that. Bunting was reported to almost hold court with these 2 men, and he would sit there and like regale them with stories of all his crimes that he would commit, and essentially made these 2 men into his henchmen.
Jesus.
Crazy. Now, police were able to get warrants to have kind of surveillance on Wagner and Bunting, and it was through these listening devices that police learned that the 2 men were frequently going back and forth between Snowtown. Snowtown is a small rural community of less than 1,000 people, about an hour and a half north of Adelaide. It's literally populated by farmers and retirees. It's about as quaint as you can get. So police travel to Snowtown, and as they're driving around, they see a lot of abandoned cars just left on the side of the road or what have you. And lo and behold, there's the Land Cruiser they've been looking for.
Classic.
So this is the Land Cruiser they're looking for. I had to do it. I'm sorry. I had to
we need at least one Star Wars reference every episode.
Vital.
So this now connected Bunting and Wagner to that vehicle. So the police then go and talk to the person whose property this vehicle is found on. And this person tells them that, yeah, he knows Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden. And he tells them something that they would never have expected. That they were renting an old abandoned bank building in town.
Huh.
I didn't even know that could be a thing. Renting an old bank. How
Yeah,
odd.
I guess a landlord wants money and they don't care who it is.
I guess not. Like, I mean, think about what you could do with the vault in that place. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm picturing like loud music and stuff, but not what these guys did.
Oh yeah, I know like well there's an in Boston there's an old prison that they turned into a hotel and bar, which is really cool.
That is really
Ooh,
cool.
wow.
I
Yeah,
like
the
that.
bar's called Clink. It's good. Isn't
I
that
like that.
cool?
I have to check that out now.
Yeah.
So this person told investigators that when they had brought the Land Cruiser out the first time, there were large black barrels inside the Land Cruiser, and that these barrels had since been moved inside the bank vault.
Oh no, I don't like this.
The bank itself had actually been closed for some time and more recently had been used just to store old equipment and things like that. So the police entered from a side door and they worked their way down to the vault. The vault door wasn't locked, and once they opened it, they saw that there was large plastic sheeting over the entrance. Yeah. The police look inside the vault and they find 6 large black barrels, rubber gloves, and bottles of acid.
Ooh.
Investigators called a forensic pathologist and asked them if the barrels, like, what he thought the barrels were for. So this pathologist is like, well, does it look like hydroponics? Does it look like it could be drugs? And they're like, no, it doesn't smell like that. And he's like, well, open one.
No, God, that's a bad mistake.
No.
So they open the first barrel, and the first thing they see is a mummified foot.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Police found dismembered bodies in all 6 barrels.
So not even full body, because my first thought was I know it's going to be body, but apparently it was just parts.
Yep. Dismembered
Okay.
bodies in
Yes.
6 barrels.
Oh.
That's lovely.
So Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden were all obviously arrested, but none of them would say anything. Police then held a press conference and asked the public for to call in tips through a line called Crime Stoppers with any information that they might they believed might help investigators. They received a tip telling them that they should go to a house in Salisbury North, which is a part of the town, because they believed there might be a body buried there.
Oh my.
So police go there and they use ground penetrating radar and they locate an area of interest. After digging it up, they found the remains of Suzanne Allen.
Oh.
2 hours later, they found a second body, and this one was Ray Davies,
Oh God.
the person that last rented that particular house, John Bunting.
Uh, okay, smoking gun.
Yeah, idiots.
Yeah, literally.
Idiots.
Yeah, let me just bury this body in my backyard, dumbass.
Yeah, I'm going to bury 2 bodies in my backyard. I'm going to keep barrels full of bodies in a vault, but not bother to lock it. Yeah, idiots.
Ass.
So at this point, police are simultaneously digging up the yard at Salisbury North, and they're trying to separate and determine who is exactly in the barrels from the bank vault. Forensic pathologists were literally forced to take each body part from the barrels and lay them out on the floor and piece by piece determine which body part went with each other. Literally,
like they were all mixed up.
Yes.
Oh God.
Essentially the world's worst jigsaw puzzle ever.
Oh God.
Yeah. So Bunting and his idiot minions had used an acid to try to dissolve the bodies, but they made some crucial mistakes. First, they didn't use enough acid to really break down the bodies, or at least the acid they used might not have been strong enough.
Yeah.
And second, they then enclosed them in an oxygen-deprived environment and therefore essentially slowed down decomposition.
Right. And yeah, like because of the way acids work. Yeah. You can't. Well, obviously they weren't fucking chemists, huh?
no, they're not very smart at all, and definitely not chemists. He probably thought, I'm just picturing what they said about him using acids and chemicals on insects. He probably thought what happened to a fly would happen to a human, you know?
Right.
So the forensic team had fairly well preserved pieces to work with. They could literally see tattoos and get fingerprints to help identify people. They could also see the wounds and the causes of death.
Wow. So this acid really didn't work.
No, not at all. So there were 3 that were strangled to death, some that were gagged, and there was evidence of maltreatment.
Mm-hmm.
Some had handcuffs still on their wrists or thumbs. Some of them had burns.
On their thumbs?
Yeah, they were like thumb cuffs on somebody.
I've never heard of that in my life, but okay.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Some had burns, and some even had burn marks on the bottom of their feet and scrotums.
Ooh.
Yeah. So all told, there were 8 bodies in the barrels.
Woo!
Yeah. So at this point, police who had been looking for 5 missing persons now had a total of 10 bodies. 2 of their missing 5 people were found at the residence. And the police obviously at this point are confused and quite concerned. Like, are the other 3 they're looking for in the barrels? And if so, who are the other 5?
Right.
How many more bodies are out there? So days after arresting Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden, police became aware of another associate of theirs, this guy by the name of Jamie Lasakis. Jamie was born into a troubled family, and he endured a lot through his awful childhood. His father sexually abused him, and he died when he was young. It was soon after that Bunting came into Lasakis' life and became a huge role model for the boy. Bunting basically made himself into this kid's white knight of sorts. Lasakis was there and aware of what Bunting had done, and as he became older, Bunting even got him involved in some of his crimes.
Ooh.
Over days of interviewing, Lasakis shared everything that he knew. This resulted in a 2,000-page statement that recounted 8 years of death and destruction.
Oh God.
That must have been a lot of information.
I can't even imagine sitting there. Like, I mean, they do say it goes on for days, but 2,000 pages of information.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, at least they're thorough.
Yeah, thank God for that.
Now, Lasakis would actually implicate one more person in these crimes. Himself.
Wow, he's really just confessing to it all. I wonder why.
Well, is he falling on the sword for somebody else?
No, it's funny. Joyous got it right on the head. She's so good at predicting what I'm going to say next. She actually hit it right on the head. He couldn't bear the guilt. They couldn't bear the weight of the guilt. So he told them about the details about the murders, some before he was involved and he'd only heard about, the ones he witnessed, and the ones that he took part in as an active participant. He basically gave police everything they were going to need for their entire case. And he also gave them the most crucial piece, why all these people had been killed.
Ooh, I always love knowing the why.
Well, you're about to learn. So Lasakis told police about the very first victim, Clinton Tresize. Tresize was murdered by Bunting sometime between July 9th and August 31st of 1992 when he was only 19. He was killed in Bunting's home in Salisbury North. He was attacked with a hammer and his skull was caved in.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was believed that Tresize was gay, and that's why he was killed.
Ugh.
Ray Davies, who was found in the backyard of that house, had been murdered between December 25th, 1995 and January 21st of 1996. Davies was killed because Bunting suspected him of abusing children.
Ugh.
Yeah. So literally judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, that's what he thinks he is.
Yep. It even came out that Lasakis's mother had even helped in the killing of Davies.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's twisted.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Fucking fucked up people, huh?
You think? Holy hell.
Whole lot of them in this story.
Yeah, it's just insane to have so many accomplices.
Again, you tie into things nicely, but you just tied into something at the end. So it's very. Suzanne Allen, who was also found in the backyard, was killed between November 20th and December 10th of 1996. Bunting and Wagner would eventually confess to cutting up her body.
Ugh.
Now, they claim that she died of natural causes and that they just buried her.
Interesting.
I
Now,
don't buy it.
Yeah, natural causes my ass.
Right? And why wouldn't you just call the police? But hey, they're probably collecting her disability.
Oh yeah, probably they don't want to report her dead because they can't have her money anymore.
Yeah, probably.
Even if it was natural causes. And you know what? They'd probably get looked into, even if it was natural causes, quote unquote. So
Yeah, that's
who
true.
knows what the truth is.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, Lasakis was even able to help police put names to some of the bodies in the barrels. Amazingly, some of those names included family members of some of the killers.
Ew, hate that.
At some point before, Lasakis had told Bunting that his own brother, Troy Yude, had molested him when he was young, and that was enough for Bunting. So between August 25th and September 8th, Yude was in his bedroom alone when Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden, as well as Lasakis, all just showed up at his house. They dragged him into the bathroom and began torturing him. They burned him, they crushed his toes with pliers, and they would eventually kill him. As Lasakis kept talking, the acts of depravity that these men were committing kept getting worse.
Oh, no.
There was a young man by the name of Fred Brooks that had gone missing in 1998. He was 18 and was killed sometime between September 16th and 18th of that year, 98. Bunting had dated Brooks's mother, and at some point, Bunting wrongfully suspected that Brooks was a pedophile. Similar to Yude before him, he was tortured, his toes were crushed, he was burned with cigarettes, but the men took this one to a whole new sadistic level of fucking torture.
Oh, God.
They took a sparkler. You know those really long, thin things you light and you can wave around?
Yep.
They inserted the part you would hold into the eye of Brooks's penis, and they let it burn down, and he was forced to watch.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Ew.
As the white hot
God.
sparkler became closer and closer to his flesh.
Oh.
And then he had to endure the immense amount of pain that kind of burning would do to somebody.
Oh no.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Oh my God.
So I would imagine that being killed after that was probably just relief.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would fucking feel like. Like when I first read it, I thought that they had stuck the lit end in first, and which is bad enough. But maybe you would have passed out from the pain. But knowing that you had to watch, like as it got closer and closer, nope.
Wait. They stuck the other end in?
They stuck the end you hold. The end you hold.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that. Oh. No.
Yeah, that makes it so much worse now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these killers also had no problem killing their own friends. A man by the name of Michael Gardiner, who was 19, was murdered between August 31st and September 17th of 97 because Wagner was offended that he was gay. He was a homosexual, therefore he had to go. This was followed by Gavin Porter, who was killed between April 3rd and 8th, 1998, because Bunting considered him a waste, a quote-unquote waste, because he was a drug addict.
Come on.
A man by the name of Gary O'Dwyer was killed between October 27th, and November 14th of 98, simply because Bunting felt that it had been too long since he killed somebody.
Okay, this is getting bad.
Yeah, it's escalating. Every step of the way, this is just escalating. So despite what these killers were claiming, police thought that some of these killings were really done just to cover their tracks or to tie up loose ends or possible liabilities. So Barry Lane was murdered between October 15th and November 3rd of 97 because he was a known pedophile. Now, interestingly, Bunting spent time with Lane, but he was using him to get information about who else in the area might be pedophiles. So he literally tolerated this guy's, quote unquote, tolerated this guy's continued existence until he felt that he had gotten everything from him, or eventually he just couldn't let him live anymore and he killed him. So
He
yeah.
really thinks he's fucking Dexter.
Yeah, although this is pre-Dexter, but yes.
Well, yes.
Although with the barrels from, I think, what was it, season 5, like there's a lot of similarities here. So maybe this
Well,
inspired.
the trash bags, that's what does it for me.
Yeah. So there was also a man by the name of Thomas Trevelyan. Trevelyan was 18, and he was actually involved in murdering Barry Lane and helped dispose of the bodies.
Yeah.
I don't know how they
So
get
just hang out with his murderer. That sounds like a great idea.
I'm blown away because there's at least 6 people involved. Like, how do you? Anyway, crazy to me. So Trevelyan was murdered between the 3rd and 6th of November in 97 because he was unstable and unpredictable. And there was the obvious fear that he might tell someone something. So he had to go. Trevelyan was killed by hanging, and they made it look like a suicide.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they had no idea until the kid, Jamie, there was telling the police everything. So Mark Hayden's wife, Elizabeth, her disappearance was like the one that was the main impetus for starting the entire investigation. She had been murdered between November 20th and 26th of 98 because Bunting felt that she might know too much.
Oh.
Yeah. Her remains were in the barrels in Snowtown. The men's killing began to slow down at this point because police were starting to look into Elizabeth's disappearance. But sadly, the 12th and final victim was
so many.
12. I know. This one was killed while the police were beginning to close in on the killers. A kid by the name of David Johnson, who was Lasakis's stepbrother, wanted to buy a new computer, and he was told that there was a computer for sale in Snowtown. Little note here. Home computers in the late 90s were kind of a new-ish thing in the US, thanks to Microsoft taking off and making everything nice and user-friendly. They ranged between the price of $700 upwards to $3,000. And they were probably even more expensive in Australia at that time. So this was good bait for David Johnson.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. So on May 9th, 1999, he was brought to the bank in Snowtown, where Bunting and Wagner ambushed him. During the torture of Johnson, the men extracted his PIN for his card. Now, some of the killers went to a nearby ATM to confirm that the numbers were actually accurate. But by the time they had returned, Bunting had already murdered Johnson. It'd be 11 days later that the police would enter the vault for the first time and discover the barrels. Now, for police, they needed to fully lay out the motivations of the 12 murders in such a way that a court would convict all of them for all of the murders.
Yep.
Forensic psychiatrists were very quick to point out that the key to everything was John Bunting.
Yep.
Bunting's hatred for homosexuals and pedophiles was the number one reason for most of their murders. He considered himself a vigilante as it pertained to pedophiles. Bunting apparently actually had a board on his wall with colored lines connecting people that he supposedly had identified as pedophiles. He actually believed that he could identify a pedophile by sight alone while walking down the street.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, he somehow claimed that he could look at someone and know if they were a child molester.
No.
Delusion.
Just
Absolute
no.
delusion.
So as the investigation plays out, it becomes clear that most of their victims were not actually pedophiles. And the more the
Naturally, he had no fucking proof.
right, this guy's fucking out of his mind.
But he knows. You can't deny that. He knows. He looked at you. He knows that you're a pedophile.
Right. But police actually point out that the interesting thing is if you look at the first murder, it's quick and it's committed using a hammer and blunt force trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
By-
because they're learning and they have no
Correct.
idea what they're doing.
So by the time you get to the sixth or seventh murder, Bunting is now binding his victims. He's torturing them, crushing their toes, etc. Bunting obviously started to enjoy the pain he was causing and the killing.
Yeah, clearly.
The biggest hurdle for investigators became how did he convince other people to join him in his crimes?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, as we've discussed in other cases, like Sylvia Likens and Junko Furuta, John Bunting had the ability to attract to him weaker people that saw him as a powerful leader. I think of that, I can't remember his name now, but the Japanese guy who was torturing Furuta. Yeah. So it just makes me think of him and all those people that said nothing while they were all torturing this girl.
Yeah.
So these people would obviously be vulnerable and looking for someone that would make them feel included, purposeful, powerful, because, there's nothing else in their life to give them an explanation for why they would join in for such a horrible act.
Yeah.
If Bunting wasn't manipulating them.
And then once they have that, they don't want to do anything to have that go away. So they just go along with whatever they're told to do.
Well, that, and once you're involved in that kind of crime, you're stuck. Where are you going to go? You know what happens to people that turn on this guy.
Yeah. They fucking die.
So the case became known as the Bodies in the Barrels murders, and pre-trial began in December of 2000. Investigators had almost 70 witnesses to ensure that every piece of evidence was tested and presented as best it could be.
Wow. They really put together a case, huh?
Well, this isn't even the trial. This is pre-trial.
Wow.
It took 6 months of presenting evidence. That's how thorough they were.
Wow.
So in June of 2001, Lasakis pled guilty to his part in 4 murders, and he was given 26 years in prison. But he would then go on to be the star witness against the other men.
Wow.
Lasakis was instrumental in telling the story, not just what had happened, but why it had happened and how the personalities of all the different men affected things.
Yep.
The trial for Bunting and Wagner began on October 16th, 2002. I guess this shows that it's not just the U.S. that has a slow judicial process. Just saying.
Yeah.
But Hayden faced his trial separately from the other two because he was only actually facing 2 counts of murder. So Bunting and Wagner were obviously defiant the entire trial and showed zero remorse.
Ooh.
Yeah, they just sat there like stone cold fuckers.
Absolute fucking psychopaths.
Forensic evidence showed that Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden had all been inside the vault in proximity to the barrels and all the weapons and tools that were in there. Records show that the men had rented the bank and used the victims' cards to withdraw money from their disability pensions. However, the most fucked up piece of evidence, audio cassette recordings.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh.
These fucking animals recorded themselves torturing their victims. Bunting, Wagner, and Hayden had gone so far as to force their victims to record messages to their loved ones.
No.
Telling them that they were leaving and to never speak to them again.
No.
Yeah. One example is Suzanne Allen. She was forced to record herself saying that she had met a man and was moving overseas. Police did not. Yeah, that's fucked up.
But how do you keep your composure? Because I'm sure
No,
that she
no.
was.
From what I didn't go into it in this moment. They recorded the whole thing and then later recorded parts and pieced it together so it sounded like one coherent message.
Oh wow.
And
Awful, awful,
and they
awful.
would call and these would be left as messages. So the people listening to these calls thought that they were left by that person, their loved one, and they took it at face value, which is why some of these people were never reported missing.
Fucked up. So fucked up.
So for prosecutors, this was gold because you could hear them extracting the information from their victims about their pensions and their bank cards and all that shit. The jury, however, had to sit through it all.
Awful.
Yep. They
That's
had
fucking traumatic for the jury of this case.
they had to sit through the torture, talks of electrocution, decapitation, and in one instance, cannibalism.
Oh.
After killing David Johnson, their final victim, Bunting and Wagner cut off part of Johnson's body. They then took it to a friend's house in Snowtown and told them that they had just got a fresh cut of meat and wanted to cook it up. They they fried it in a pan and they served it to themselves and this unwitting friend of theirs.
Oh.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Like, could you imagine? Like, just picture yourself like you're like, oh, fuck, these assholes I know got arrested. And then you hear that in their trial.
Oh God. Nope. Oh God.
That's
Horrific.
So fucked up.
Horrific.
The prosecution made their case for 174 days.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is the
There's
most
plenty of shit to
thorough.
say.
Yeah. So thorough. In stark contrast of that, the defense took 18 minutes to make their case.
Yeah, the defending lawyer like has to do their due diligence, but is like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not much to say there.
At the end of each trial in Australia, the defendants have a chance to say something to the court in their own defense, but Bunting and Wagner had absolutely nothing to add whatsoever. They didn't say a thing.
Wow.
So on September 8th, 2003, the jury reached their verdict. Bunting and Wagner were found guilty on all counts except the murder of Suzanne Allen. The jury was unable to agree on her death because they claimed she died of natural causes and they had buried her, and the evidence could not prove otherwise.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, still 11 other counts of murder. It's not like they're going anywhere.
Yeah.
So they both received life in prison without parole because it was so obvious by their behavior that they were never likely to be rehabilitated.
Yep.
Now, Hayden was convicted as being an accomplice, as the jury could not conclude that he himself had taken part in the murders themselves. So he wasn't actually convicted of murder.
Wow.
But he received 28 years in prison.
Wow. For an accomplice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's quite the high profile case.
No, very true.
Many Australians now believe that the town of Snowtown is an overlooked victim in this entire case, as it is now forever linked with one of Australia's most horrific crimes. And to emphasize this point, someone in a documentary I watched said, not a single one of the murderers lived in or was from Snowtown. None of the victims were from Snowtown. And only the last murder took place in Snowtown. And yet this whole case is known as the Snowtown murders. It's a huge black mark that hangs all over the entire town. So this case is the worst serial killer case in Australian history, but it is unique in the world because it is the largest group of serial killers that also preyed on each other.
Yeah.
It's fucking nuts. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, they're very unique and absolutely crazy. And if they didn't live in Australia, I might have tried writing them, but I'm not gonna. The international postage on stuff is just too much, I think. So, but that is the case of the Snowtown murders.
That is one of a kind of case. That was fucking crazy.
Absolutely nuts. Like, holy shit.
I'm still blown away. The lengths that these guys went to, the punches they pulled, the things they were willing to do with no remorse, by the way.
For me, it's the sparkler moment.
Yeah, see
But
that.
yeah,
Oh God.
man, I'm gonna have to have dinner later, and I'm like, I want to vomit.
You're like, no steak.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Oh, side note, did they ever say what part of the body? Not that it's,
No,
gonna be any better, but did they
I
ever say what
don't
part of the body
no,
know.
they ate?
they did not specify.
Good, I don't want to know.
No.
I've heard enough.
But think about this for a second. That was the first person they decided to cook up and eat. If they hadn't been caught, how much more escalation? Like where
Oh,
might
it
that
would have
have kept
gotten
going?
so much worse. And they probably would have had a bigger crew. They probably would have
Yeah.
been
Well, they can't really get a big crew because they keep killing them off.
Well,
uh,
and you a big crew. Once you invite
replace
another
one for
person
another,
in, but every person you invite in just opens the door to possibly getting caught.
True.
So I don't know. But again, they weren't that smart.
Yeah. They
They
honestly
thought
managed
they
to
were
do a
bigger
lot of
than
killing.
everybody. So
Yeah, absolutely nuts. There was one case where there was a killer couple, and for some reason they wanted to get someone else they knew involved and invited someone over and killed the person in front of him.
okay.
And that guy had to sit there and pretend he was okay with it just so that he could leave alive. And then
Yeah, that's kind of what you have to do.
yeah, and then immediately call the police. Like how fucked up.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's the case of Snowtown. Final thoughts on that, guys?
Absolute insanity. And like I said, the depths of all of that torture. And several times, as we had said, it reminded me of Dexter. He thought he was a vigilante taking out evil for his own purposes, and the way that they disposed of the bodies and stuff like that. Oh my God.
Really sounded like he was enjoying it, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Oh, yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't Dexter, in the show Dexter, he doesn't necessarily enjoy it so much as it relieves that urge that he has. But
True.
in this case, Bunting definitely took way too much pleasure in it.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't exact, but,
Yeah. And Joyous, your thoughts?
I mean, fuck.
Yeah, I guess that sums it up.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Sad. Just fucking sad for all those families, for all the, a real, there's no peace for any of those families ever.
No. And it's just too bad that it's really his crimes were hate crimes. Even though the people he was directing them at weren't the people he hated, but it was still hate crimes.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. Sad is the right word.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's thank Millennium Angel for recommending that one to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was quite an intense
Thanks for
case.
putting me through that, you fucking crazy bitch.
I was going to say, yeah, that's every hour of sleep I don't get is on you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that.
For all our listeners out there, we do have an Instagram and a Facebook page, so go check us out, say hello, leave some comments, give us some case suggestions, or you can email us at unsungmurderballads@outlook.com. So don't hesitate to, reach out. Don't be a stranger. We're not going to bite you, I promise.
No, we definitely look forward to hearing from you guys. We like your feedback. We like your comments, suggestions, whatever you guys want to throw at us. Just be interactive,
Yeah, the more we can interact, the better. All right, so thank you guys for joining us again. We'll see you next week. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.